This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire City Plan Commission meeting. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM. This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television.
I'd like to call the Plan Commission meeting to order. And again, welcome all of those that are joining us this evening. We appreciate you taking the time to come down. Before we get started, a couple of things. If you would please, if you plan to speak at any time during the meeting this evening, if you would please fill out one of the yellow documents on the back table there. When you come up to speak, you'll want to give that to Ned up here at the front desk. And then when you come to the podium, if you would please introduce yourself with your name and then your address. In regards to agenda item number 1, just to clarify how that's going to work, we'll hear a brief summary from Mr. Tufte. It is a reconsideration, or a request for reconsideration. There's been a motion for this reconsideration. Once it's been turned back to us, we'll see if there's a second for that reconsideration. If there is, then there'll be discussion amongst the commissioners. It is not a public hearing, so the only participants out here will join us if we have specific questions for you. So at this point, if it's found that there's either new evidence to rehear this conditional use application again, or if there is proof of a change of conditions, then this will get reheard at a future date. So tonight, all we are doing is looking to see if there is either new evidence or a change in conditions to justify rehearing the application for the conditional use. And I'm going to defer to staff very often tonight, more than likely, so bear with us. With that, I guess we'll start with agenda item number 1.
Just to refresh members, this is the property located on Menominee at 10th. And also in your packet is a floor plan showing the layout of the first floor of the business. We did receive a request from Commission Member Seymour to place this item on the agenda to allow reconsideration. The original staff report is attached. The Commission motion to approve this request failed on a 3-4 vote at your last meeting. Commissioner Seymour is one of the 4 members that voted against and thus may request reconsideration. The item is placed on your agenda for Mr. Seymour to motion reconsideration. Any member can second. The motion then should be discussed by the Commission as to why it should be reconsidered. If the motion passes by majority vote, the item is then reconsidered. We also attached in your packet a memo we received from the city attorney. In the Commission's discussion of reconsiderations determines that there's new evidence that exists which was not presented at the Plan Commission hearing. They should request staff to establish another public hearing on the request so that the new evidence can be entered into the public record. And you can look and read the city attorney's memo in depth and you'll explain that. This is, again, not a public hearing. You're not to be entering evidence into a record at this meeting simply because it's not been noticed as a public hearing. If you believe there's new evidence, then instruct us to set up a new hearing and we'll do that. And that's one of the ways in which Commission can direct staff for reconsideration if a majority feels that's true. A change in condition, as noted in the city attorney's memo, normally staff takes care of that. That would be like a change in application. They came in, they said we're going to change the hours of operation for this use. That would, in our mind, be a change that we would say you can now submit a new application. We'd set up the new hearings ourselves and run it through that way. But as it pertains to new evidence, you were the folks that heard the evidence and you're the ones that make the determination. This is new evidence we never heard, and therefore we think we should have a new hearing. And the city attorney's memo will give you some direction as to what that is. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Any questions for Darrell? I guess not. Thank you. So we have a motion for reconsideration. Commissioner Seymour?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the conditional use permit for 1004 Menominee Street, which was denied at the July 5th Plan Commission meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Mitchell.
Since the meeting, the last Plan Commission meeting, I spoke with a member of the Landmarks Commission who was, I guess I would say, surprised at the outcome of the vote that night, and talked to me about the Landmarks Commission meeting at which the applicant had given a presentation about his plans for the facility, and she talked about quite a bit of information that we did not hear that night. In fact, I don't think we really heard anything other than that it was to be a tavern and that the kitchen was too small for a restaurant. So I think it is fair to reconsider, in that I do believe there is new information for this commission. There's probably not new information out there for other people, but it certainly would be new to me, and I would like a chance to hear it directly from the applicant.
Any other comments? Commissioner Peterson.
Is the email from Jeremy Gaggart considered new information too, as far as the planning area and taverns in the Water Street area?
That is public information available to Plan Commission members, and it's your determination as to whether or not you feel that is new information that you weren't aware of.
Information I wasn't aware of.
Any other comments? Questions? Discussion? Any questions for any members of our those in attendance? No? Seeing none. Again, this is a motion for reconsideration. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Agenda item will be placed on a future agenda. Agenda item number 2. Public hearing for recommendation, parking requirements amendment.
The comprehensive plan identifies the need to update the city's zoning code parking requirements, and we attached the draft amendment in your packet. The Plan Commission reviewed initial drafts and materials at 3 previous meetings on this topic, and now the amendment has been reviewed by City Attorney's Office, and there is some word changes that were made to put it into proper form to insert into city code. And you'll probably note those as you looked at this final draft. The substantive changes would include the following. Number 1, parking for residential or office use, which is typically all-day or long-term parking that is proposed to be off-site from a development, may be required by the Plan Commission to provide a contract to assure that the parking is maintained. And I highlighted in yellow the location of that amendment on page 1. Right now, residential is required to, and has been typically required by Plan Commission if the parking is off-site, to have an agreement, but that agreement may be something as simple as a letter. And this amendment now says residential and office, which is typically your long-term parking, has to be tied to a contract if it is off-site. Number 2, outdated provisions for mixed-use parking, downtown parking, and joint-use parking is eliminated and replaced then with a general policy allowing the Plan Commission to reduce parking requirements based on a parking analysis. Those provisions then are struck out beginning here with 2. Again, and then the added provisions down the bottom of page 2 where the Plan Commission may simply, as a policy statement, reduce parking if it's based on a parking analysis. Number 3, the bike parking requirements allow a 5% reduction in vehicle parking, but only for the central business district zoned areas. And that amendment is located here. Presently, it's allowed in all areas. Plus, there's an additional 5% reduction the Plan Commission may allow if they double their bike parking. Change number 4, the provisions to allow Plan Commission to grant parking requirement reductions for uses that provide ride share or group transit passes has been added. That's noted here as provision 4. Number 5, the parking requirements for a multifamily development has been changed to a 1 stall per bedroom for each dwelling unit standard. Our present standard is 1.5 stalls for 1 or 2 bedrooms, 2 stalls for 3 bedrooms, and then 1 stall per bedroom for 4-bedroom or larger dwelling units. The amendment simply is 1 space per bedroom in a dwelling unit. Number 6 is there's some changes in new categories in terms of parking requirements, and examples here are the term funeral home is used, the new uses, and we went blurred. Telemarketing and auto repair shops have been added. And then the final change is the parking design standards have been changed. That's the old table that gets eliminated. And then we place in the code a new set of designs that actually the parking standard is about 2 foot smaller. Right now it's a 62-foot bay. This goes down to a 60-foot bay. And it also provides then standards for half bays. That's what basically the change is. The final thing we would note is the council hearing for this code amendment has been scheduled for August 22nd. I'll repeat that for the audience. The council hearing for this has been scheduled for August 22nd, not next week like we normally would have. Council's Monday night hearing next week is canceled, so if you come down here, there won't be anybody here. So the council won't hear this until August 22nd. So that does allow the Plan Commission to make changes if you desire to postpone and discuss among yourself changes, things such as that. We did receive 2 letters on this matter, and I did hand those out prior to your meeting. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Any questions for Darrell? Commissioner Ebert.
I have one. Why is the provision for churches and funeral homes different? Churches, it's 1 for every 6 seats, and funeral homes, it's 1 for every 4. And that just kind of struck me as odd.
Odd. That's the standard that's been in code for as long as I've been here, so over 30 years. I know, again, you'll find varying standards in varying communities.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It just was funny.
It is.
Commissioner Peterson.
I'm just thinking with churches, you may have more children attend church services where they traditionally don't always attend funerals, although funerals are held at churches too.
Good point. Good point.
Any other questions for Darrell? Commissioner Radeva.
Darrell, one question. The telemarketing call center, does the United Health facility out at London Road comply with that?
We've not made that check, but that is an example of a use. And we have a couple others in this community that really park heavy compared to like an office use, which is probably how that was reviewed when it was originally approved. So, yeah, it works, yes.
Any other questions for Darrell? Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yep.
This is a public hearing, and If there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item, you're welcome to come up. If there's numerous people here speaking on the same subject, only comments or a request that I would make is, please, if you do come up, tell us or explain to us something that we haven't already been explained or told. That we would appreciate that. Otherwise, is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item?
Good evening. My name is Helene Smyer. I live at 320 Broadway Street in historic Randall Park neighborhood. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the neighborhood and in support of the proposed changes that deal with one space for each bedroom in a dwelling unit. We strongly feel that this would help the neighborhood in several ways. It's a proactive way to address parking issues for new development before they become more problematic. For example, we approved a housing unit for students in the 200 block of Chippewa Street, which more than doubled the current occupancy, which means you have more than double the amount of cars. So the car space with the allowances, there are 48 people who would live there, but there are only 36 required spaces. Well, if this continues in such a pattern, it's really unsustainable in the neighborhood. I think that you could probably see that. And living in that area, students who come as commuters won't find a place to park, and so they're just going to move more and more inward in the neighborhood. And already Chippewa Street is full, Niagara Street is full. You're up to Broadway Street, which of course is where I live, but I'm not bringing that up because of me, but you're hitting the park and you're hitting church areas. And I think that goes into my second point, that our neighborhood is not necessarily special, any more special than any other neighborhood, but it is different because we have so many people from the city who visit. They come to shop, they come to eat, they come to events in the park, they come for parades. I think this is a good move because you're allowing spaces for the visitors. And if it becomes so compacted with cars, you're going to have what you have downtown. People won't want to come because there's no space to park. So I think in terms of kind of having common ground for new developments, so we have a handle on what's acceptable and what we can, how it will impact the neighborhood and what we can absorb, and for visitors. There may be other reasons that other neighbors want to bring up, so at this point I would simply say that's all I want to say, and if others have anything to add, I would allow them to come because you see me all the time.
Any questions for Helene?
Do you have any questions?
Thanks for coming up.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening.
Hello, Alex Paternos, JCAP Campus Housing. I just wanted to talk about possible solutions that don't involve this amendment. I know in Madison, visiting some friends, they have a 2-hour parking policy where residents, if you go down to City Hall for $20, you can show a piece of mail and then you get this parking pass that says 2-hour zone. And anybody else that parks there without that pass is ticketed after 2 hours, and they're pretty stringent about it. I know it's a big revenue maker for Madison. So I think that would be a great alternative to this parking amendment. Also, the astronomical cost for developers to add these parking stalls. I know at 811 Chippewa Street, for just the 12 stalls added behind there to meet the requirements, it was $6,250. I think this is really going to deter the type of development and improvements to the housing, and all the new stuff that comes up like that is all set up with sprinkler systems, unlike the existing housing that are not up to fire code at all. There's also there hasn't been a proper study. I think it would be only responsible to have a third party come in and conduct a proper study to figure out who is commuting and parking there all day versus who's actually living there. And having this, 2-hour parking zone, you wouldn't have people commuting because they wouldn't be able to prove their residence, therefore being able to park there all day. That should be it. Any questions?
Commissioner Eber.
From your experience on the rental properties that you're involved with, does each tenant have a car typically?
No, and there hasn't been a proper study or a third-party study, but I know at JCAP we give out a plastic tag that you hang from your window, and I know, so 811 Chippewa Street, for example, there's 4 bedrooms, 16 people. I know only 7 passes have been given out.
Okay.
And I know, I live there, so I know that only 6 of the guys have cars, and it's completely full, so.
Do the rest of them commute by bike or use the bus? Or?
They have bikes, and they take the bus, and I see a lot of them every day. They share cars.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
With the $20 pass in Madison, is that permanently affixed to a windshield or a side window, or can that be passed on from a resident to someone who's visiting?
It has a license plate number on it, too, so any parking enforcement officer would be able to tell if someone was trying to cheat the system. So once you have it in place, it's, they've got it down to a science. It's a huge revenue,
And those passes are good for a year?
A year, yeah.
Okay.
For $20, I think people would gladly pay that to decrease the parking in front of their house.
Mr. Granlund?
I know that the numerical, mathematical part of this is the most fascinating one for most people. I just want to be clear. Do you have any objections to the other parts of this? Because it's a fairly complicated number of changes we proposed for both clarifying and simplifying some of these standards. Do you have any comment for some of those other portions? Or, like I say, so you've made clear your ideas about the trade-offs we were considering, but there's other parts. Any thoughts?
As far as the other, 1 through 4 of the amendment, no, I'm only, focused on the parking stall per bedroom.
Commissioner Eber?
I have one more question that kind of goes along with Terry's. Those parking passes, are those enforced on the weekends too, or just during weekdays?
No, just on the weekdays.
Okay.
It's per city. I know Madison it's with the exemption of Sundays and city holidays, but that's something that, it's a, situational thing, whatever they decide to do. I know it'll bring in a lot of money for Eau Claire, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item?
I'm Andrea Gapko, and I live at 914 2nd Avenue, and we own a property at 917 Oxford Avenue. Our Oxford Avenue property is a 4-plex, 1 bedroom in each apartment, and I like to have 4 tenants, but I can't always guarantee that. And I'm speaking in favor of requiring the 1 space for each bedroom. I think that would be a minimum. I would like to see 1 for each occupant. In our case, last year when we had 6 people in the building, there were 6 cars that also were in the vicinity. We have enough space to put all those cars off the street, and I know some places don't, but they also have to then play musical chairs with their cars because there's a two stalls in a garage and then 2 outside stalls, but there's room behind the 2 garages, or in front of the 2 garages for 2 more cars. But I think a minimum of 1 per bedroom at least helps reduce some of the density of parking, and therefore I support the proposal.
Any questions? Thanks for coming up. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item?
Hi, I'm Mark Gideonson, 520 2nd Avenue. I just wanted to speak to the JCAP developers' comments. I also have lived in an area that has 2-hour restricted parking, and I owned rental real estate in those areas as well. And I got to say, the reason for doing that was really to protect the homeowners' parking availability from outside people coming in. In that case, it'd be things like people coming in for Cubs game or something and just saturating, enormous parts. That said, even in that situation, it was a nod to the fact that a lot of those homes were older and didn't have parking originally incorporated, but all the new developments in those areas did require adequate parking for any new development or redevelopment. So the idea was not to add to the problem of the congested parking, but to recognize that in some older neighborhoods, you did have to do things to protect from outside. I think in our neighborhood, the idea is not to try to prevent outside people from coming or dissuade people from coming and using the amenities in the neighborhood, but just to make sure we don't have that overcrowding.
Any questions? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Good evening.
Good evening, David Mortimer, a member of the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association. I'm also a County Board Supervisor of the 16th District, and I live at 304 6th Avenue on the corner of 6th and Chippewa. And I want to speak in favor of this and also shed a little bit of light on the gentleman that spoke before from JCAP, that, the issue that we're talking about is increased density in this neighborhood. We know it's going to become more dense, and that parking will become a problem. And this solution seems to be the best one that I've heard of, and we've discussed it at length in our Randall Park Neighborhood Association meetings. The 2-hour parking idea, I don't think is going to work. I think it's, requires more enforcement. We already don't have a lot of staffing and resources for more enforcement of all that parking area for 2 hours. Also, I do take issue with the question about renters having cars. In my experience, 100% of them do in my neighborhood, judging from the rental across the alley next door to me and the rental next door. Every year, there are 6 cars, 3 parked in the back, 3 in the street with the house next door. And that's for 12 years. There's not been a year that there's been any less. For the car in the alley, it has 4 tenants, and there have been 4 cars. In fact, in those 2 apartments in the last 12 years, I've never even once heard of, and we've gotten to know most of those neighbors and most of those students, never once has there been a situation where there's been a student there without a vehicle. And as the neighborhood becomes more dense, I really do think that this is a solution that can head off a problem that's going to be something more difficult too, as the neighborhood is stressed and has fewer and fewer owner-occupied homes and more rentals. I think it's something to think about now, and I encourage you to support it.
Any questions? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and looking for a motion for the parking requirements amendment. Again, this is a recommendation to the City Council.
I move approval.
We have a motion for approval, or is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Radabaugh.
Yeah, so I lived in St. Paul for a while, off Summit and Grand Avenue, and they had kind of the same situation. Taverns, restaurants, retail, residents behind that, and then older homes behind that. So their solution was kind of the opposite of what we're talking about here. The further you went back in the neighborhood, that's where the parking permits were. So where they wanted to keep the tourist folks out of the neighborhoods, that's where they had the 2-hour parking. The streets 1 or 2 back, they allowed students, to park on the streets there, but if you got a couple blocks back, there was the 2-hour permit parking. So that might be a solution further in the neighborhood, but I don't think kind of right off from Water Street. And then you're going to keep tourists of that, parks and restaurants.
Mr. Mitchell.
I'd like to say a number of things about this, but sticking with the 2-hour parking issue, in the Third Ward neighborhood, we had 2-hour parking, and the traffic was very heavy because people trolled all day for parking spaces. And one of the big changes we made in that neighborhood was to eliminate the 2-hour parking, and it's all-day parking there. That has other problems, granted, but it did make a big difference to just the safety in the neighborhood. So I see 2-hour parking as a more difficult problem.
Mr. Granlund.
I want to be careful to remember that this is a citywide parking ordinance we're considering, not simply just applying it to the most recent areas where we've had the most recent number of permits come up for various things. We're not enacting this in any way to target parking within a district or anything. We've got some comparisons that have been made that we've reviewed, and comparisons with other cities, other parts of the city as well. And like I said, I just want to keep track of the fact that it's not trying to solve a neighborhood problem. It is a citywide ordinance we're trying to review.
Any other comments? Did you have another? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I agree with Commissioner Granlund, and we have made a special effort regarding the Central Business District, so we're looking there as well. And we've also looked at the implication or the impact of this on other developments in other parts of the city. If you recall, we looked at developments on the south side. I'd also like to point out that the current ordinance says that in the case where a parking study clearly shows that this ordinance is a burden, that the commission can make exceptions. Now, the parking study is going to have to be brought forward by the developer to show that, but there is a way for us to give special consideration, and we've been able to do that all along. So I think that's an important part of it. But I think that the problem for the older neighborhoods, if you would bear with me just a minute to just look at that, particularly the areas around the university, that the amount of parking on the streets is so dense that it interferes with safety, it interferes with snow removal, with garbage collection, with street cleaning, and I think that this is a modest change. I would have gone even further, I think, if I had personally had the opportunity, but I'm satisfied that this is a good change, and I think it's a modest change, and I think it will make a difference in our older neighborhoods.
Any other comments or discussion? We did have a couple of other letters that were sent to us in regards to those being opposed or against. I agree too. I think it was time for this. I think what we're proposing is fair. It's hopefully going to take us into the next generation or the next transition that Eau Claire is experiencing. And I think it's necessary for us to make these steps so that we're at least have the flexibility for both ways. And I think that's important for people to understand. We're not looking to add to bigger parking lots. In some cases, we're going to reduce parking lot size in regards to bikes and bike racks and the one-bedroom, one-stall idea is not so much to create bigger parking lots, but maybe reduce the amount of density too at the same time. But so these are all things that we're considering, and I think that what we've done, and I think the fact that if somebody wants to take the step to have a parking study done to question some of these changes, then that's up to the developer. But I think at this point I'm in agreement, and I'm in favor of the change. So, with that, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approving the parking requirements amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Agenda item number 3, again for recommendation, the final plat for Trillium Estates. Thanks for coming in, everybody.
Trillium Estates is located in the town of Washington off Highway 93 and north of Double I, and we've highlighted its location. The plat came in 2 sections, and if you take the time to do the magic trick, it looks like that when you piece it back together. Again with Highway 93 and Double I. The plat is consistent with the preliminary plat as approved by Plan Commission. Under the terms of agreement we have with the town and city subdivision code, the property is allowed a lot size or density standard of 1 lot per 2 acres, which would allow 39 lots. The plat shows 38 lots and a large outlot, and we've recommended approval.
Any questions for Mr. Tufti? Guess not, thank you. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Pete Gartman with Advanced Engineering and Real Answering. I'm here representing C&M Properties. This development was approved by the town and by the county, and I think it's a great addition to the town of Washington and the community of Eau Claire. So if anybody's got any questions for me, please feel free to ask.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Peterson.
Can you tell me what the County Highway Commissioner's report was on the location of the access and as far as safety?
What they did on that is we took some of the hill out to improve some of the sight distance on that, and they're going to reduce the speed limit.
Okay, so you're going to knock down the hill on the north side east of the driveway. So
Correct.
you can see around the curve.
To get better visibility, correct.
And you'll have 8 seconds of sight distance.
Whatever the distances that are approved with the speed limit.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Garvin? I guess that's it. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the final plat for Trillium Estates. This is for recommendation. So moved. We have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, certified survey map for Highway 37. For approval.
This property is located in the town of Brunswick off Highway 37, near the former Little Red School. This shows the 38 acres owned by applicant, and we're talking about approximately the 10 acres right here. This shows then the 10 acres proposed to be subdivided, and then the lot sizes surrounding. You'll note there's a number of smaller lots, particularly to the south of the property. And then that's the certified survey map, which takes and subdivides the property into 2 lots. There's also a letter from applicant in your packet explaining the request. The property is 11.14 acres. There's an existing home on the north property that would remain with a 6.14 acre lot, and then the lot to the south would be 5 acres in size. The property is within the sewer service area of the city, and under the terms of the agreement we have with the town and city subdivision code, the area is restricted to a 10-acre lot size requirement. The Plan Commission may grant an exception to that 10-acre requirement based on the standards we note in your report. Our review of those 6 criteria would note that the proposed lots are in an area that has been divided into lots of varying size, and then primarily smaller lots across the highway to the south. The nearest sewer utility is in Grover Road, and water utility is north of I-94. Creating these infill lots will lessen pressure on development outside the sewer service area. The lot split is proposed by certified survey map. And again, the proposed lots are larger in size than lots across Highway 37 to the south, and then smaller to other lots around it. The Plan Commission will need to determine if the request is consistent with the provisions of our agreement, and if they do, they may approve this certified survey map. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Tufte? Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. So, Daryl, reading the criteria, your analysis of the criteria, we would note the following. Would you say that these criteria are met? I mean, that's how it reads to me. Am I reading it correctly?
I think the one that always comes into question is criteria E. That's a judgment call by Plan Commission in looking at, well, what does that mean as it pertains to the surrounding areas is developed, and these 2 lots are similar in size to the surrounding lots. In this instance, there are a number of smaller lots to the south. The school district has a larger lot next to it. There's larger lots to the north. It's your judgment call as to what that means, is criteria E, when you sit and look at it. The rest of it, I think, is pretty cut and dried in terms of meeting the standards. Yes, I would agree it meets the standards. Okay?
Any other questions for Daryl? That's it. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Arvid Durizik. Daryl did a pretty good job of explaining. What I want to explain is that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give this 1 lot to my son. I have a residence on there now, but if I split this with the town of Brunswick, which I'm pretty actively involved with, they have a minimum of 5-acre lot in the towns of Brunswick. That's how come I went with a 5-acre lot instead of trying to go down to like a 2 or 3 acre lot that's across the street from there. So I thought I still keep a little over 6. He gets 5. I keep him fairly close. I talked to Chris Michaels from the DOT, and he is willing to let us move the driveway into the center, and he'd give us a wide enough driveway so we wouldn't have to have an easement if one of the properties would sell. So they'll each have their own, technically their own side of the driveway, but it will be separate, but it'd be together. So, I don't know, you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions for the applicant? I don't see any.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item?
Hi, again, I'm Pete Gartman with Real Land Surveying. The only thing I'd like to note is the larger parcels to the north are gravel pits.
The larger, I'm sorry, what did you say?
The larger parcels to the north are gravel pits.
Okay.
And so that's just one thing I thought you should know, so thanks.
Sure.
Any questions? Thanks.
So. Thank you. Anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the certified survey map for Highway 37. Commissioner Peterson.
I'll make a motion to approve the certified survey map.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congrats. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, for approval, a site plan for Trendstone Warehouse showroom on South Hastings Way.
This is old South Hastings Way, which is located between South Hastings Way and New Highway 53, and the site is here. And that is the site plan for the project, showing the building, front parking, storage display area, and site access. Also in your packet are building elevations, floor plans, and we did go out and take a picture of their existing facility on Highway 93, south of the city, and we'll be talking about their outdoor display or storage and what that looks like right now in the town of Washington. That's a 10,800 square foot building. It has 2,300 square foot of office space. The remaining area is a warehouse processing space, which has required parking based on the number of employees, which they note as 7. 9 stalls are required then for the office retail space. They show 17 stalls on the site plan, so they provide their required parking. They need to maintain that required parking if they add more employees and simply by adding more parking onto the site. Applicant states that the outdoor stone slab storage display area is for customers to view full slabs of different variety of countertops. And we place in the report the provisions of city code applicable to outside activity in a commercial district. This area may be allowed to have merchandise displayed only. In other words, storage and other activities not allowed within a commercial district. Inspection of their facility in the town of Washington found they had 2 rows of display that looked like that, and then other outdoor storage or activity on the site. We would recommend that the area they show on the site plan be allowed to have outdoor display similar to what they have in the town of Washington, but anything else stored on the site must be either within an enclosed dumpster area or within their building. And the Plan Commission should talk about what you're willing to allow, make sure you're okay with what we recommended or something else as it pertains to the outdoor activities on this property. The site plan does show the street trees along Hastings Way, which are subject to city forester approval. We're again recommending street trees along New Highway 53, since that was required with other recently approved development projects within the city. They show a 34 and 30-foot wide curb cut, so Plan Commission needs to approve the wider curb cut for the project, and we are recommending that because it is needed for truck traffic going in and out of the site. A 4-stall bike rack is shown. It needs to be designed per city standards. They do indicate a pedestrian link. It should be striped all the way across the driveway. They do show a screen dumpster. Their exterior lighting is noted to be in compliance with city standards. The report goes on and reviews site grading and drainage and traffic impacts and other city services to the site. We provided a draft letter which recommends approval with conditions. The conditions are provide 6 copies of a revised site plan, noting on the face of the site plans that the parking based on the number of employees will be maintained on site. Changing this notation to state outdoor stone slab display area, outdoor storage is not allowed. noting street trees along Highway 53 as per landscape manual standards and that they're subject to city forester approval, showing that crosswalk striped all the way through the site, noting that the bike parking will be as per city standards. We note that with the approval of this site plan, you'd also be allowing that 34-foot wide curb cut. City engineer does need to approve the drainage. They will need to get a WISDOT permit for the stormwater runoff to discharge into Highway 53 right away. We'll review the signs with permit, and they must meet C3 district standards. Any questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Ebert?
I have a couple. The outdoor storage area in yellow that's adjacent to property line 228, how far off of new Highway 53 is that?
They indicate a 10-foot setback,
Okay,
and then approximately a 40-foot wide area for display. And then this next line in is their building setback, which
but
is...
going back out to the
I'm sorry,
highway,
30-foot.
how far out to the actual roadway for 53?
Oh, how far is that?
Yeah, I'm going the other direction.
This will probably help. Again, the property line being here, so they're 10 foot in from the property line. And then there's a right-of-way of 30 feet at least.
Okay.
This is then an on-ramp or off-ramp, and another on-ramp or off-ramp
Okay.
before you actually get to the roadway, which is way over
Okay,
here.
all right. I was just thinking, especially if they were coming the other direction, of if there was an accident and they ran through that fence, that would be a world of hurt if all of that merchandise got, but if it's an on-ramp and they're going the other direction, we're probably better. And then the other question I have is there going to be anything that's very glittery that is going to reflect a lot of light onto the roadway that would cause any kind of problems with vision?
That's what we saw at their existing facility. Maybe applicant can provide more information on that.
Any other questions for Daryl? Can you put the site plan map up again? So the trees would go all completely along that whole backside,
They should have street trees here and here,
all the way across?
Yep.
And then what's the spacing on those?
30 foot on center.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Peterson?
The display area, non-storage area, but the display area is allowed within the 30-foot setback?
Yes, because that's not a structure, it's just materials that appears to be sitting on pallets.
Okay.
If you, again, you should make a determination, that's display, if you're going to allow that in that area. Outdoor storage is not allowed in commercial districts in the city. Okay?
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Yep.
Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Evening, Grady Wold, owner of Trendstone. To answer your question about the display, we are up on top of a hill, so it would be one heck of an accident to reach that.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Commissioner?
How about the reflectiveness?
I think it's a non-issue.
Okay, sounds good. Does it really help people choose if they can look at the product outside in natural light?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Commissioner Radaba?
Great. Any other concerns with staff recommendations? Is the indoor storage of trash enclosure, I think it was, and street trees?
Yep, and I think we had that on our site plan. Right here, we got the, we're putting an enclosed dumpster right there.
Anything else?
Just to
Go ahead.
clarify that, when we went to their facility in town of Washington, they had a pile of, I assume it was ground material as you cut the stuff up. And again, that pile has to be within a dumpster enclosure in your shop. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the site plan for Trendstone Warehouse.
I'll move approval with staff recommendations.
All right. Second. And a second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congratulations. Agenda item number 6. Again for approval, a site plan for Action City expansion.
This is Action City Metropolis, south of I-94, off of Lorch Avenue down the south side. It's a partial site plan, again showing their existing building, and then the addition extending south out into the existing parking lot, and then the new parking lot being moved to the east, which is south end of Metropolis, and then a new curb cut added to the site on Lorch Avenue. And that's a building elevation. Also, a narrative was provided by applicant that's in your packet. That's a 29,819 square foot addition. It results in many of the parking stalls for the use being developed for the addition, and then the parking is replaced with a new parking lot to the east. The lot lines between the two uses will need to be adjusted, or they could simply file a cross parking and access easement for this situation, since this parking's not on their property. Their existing parking lot was 198 stalls. The business will be adding 28 stalls with this addition. There's no specific parking requirements in City Code for some of the uses that are within Action City. The original site plan for this business was approved using the other activities provision of 1 stall per 300 square feet. And under these provisions, the required parking for this building with this addition would be 285 stalls. The site plan does note they'll provide an 8-stall bike rack. That will need to meet city standards. And with that 5% reduction allowed under City Code, the parking requirement for this building with the addition is 270 stalls. So they're 46 stalls short of the parking requirement of 1 stall per 300 square feet. The letter provided by applicants states reasons why they do not need the required parking based on that 1 stall per 300 square feet. The letter notes that they have not had a full parking lot at the site with the current use of the building. And we'd actually agree with applicant's letter and would find particularly go-karts, laser tag, and a trampoline park likely will not need the parking of 1 stall per 300 square feet. They're just so big and don't have that many people using them. The zoning code does allow Plan Commission to reduce parking requirements based on a parking study, and we'd recommend the Plan Commission accept the letter from applicant as that parking study. The letter and site plan do indicate additional parking here, which is not intended to be developed at this time, and that would then actually add more parking to the site. And we've recommended a condition that would provide for that if they actually start parking this whole parking lot full. They do show street trees and foundation plantings. They will need to also provide shade trees or low shrubs within all those traffic control islands. Their exterior lighting is noted on the site plan, and it is noted as to meet city standards. They do have trash recycling enclosures on site, and the signs for this will be reviewed with permits. Site grading, drainage, and traffic are also reviewed in our report. We've recommended approval with a letter to applicant stating either adjust that lot line or provide a cross-access parking agreement for this situation. Provide 6 copies of a revised site plan noting the 6-stall bike rack will be designed per city standards, showing the landscape plan that addresses the concerns noted in our report, provide a letter for staff's file stating that this additional parking will be provided if this becomes an issue and park full in the future. City engineer approval of drainage. Adjust this driveway approach slightly so it comes in at a right angle to the street. With the approval of this site plan, the Planning Commission is also approving a curb cut in excess of 30 feet in width in this location. And the signs we will review with permits. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Afternoon. Evening.
Anything else you care to add, or any concerns with the recommendations from staff?
I don't believe so, no.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Ebert.
I have one. Very often when I attend events at Florian Gardens, their parking kind of overflows into your parking lot. And I'm sure that you've been aware of that, but I'm just wondering if there's been any provisions, any kind of an agreement that you guys have. Yeah, your people can park over here, because it happens all the time.
Yeah, currently what we do with them is that they contact us and ask us for permission. We let them know any days where we might have use for too much of their space, and then tell them how much they can use.
Okay.
But we've had no problems with that. It's been a fairly agreeable situation.
And you think that'll continue with the moving the parking lot over to the side?
They might have a little bit more of a walk, but I mean, yeah, we're going to continue to be agreeable for it. It very rarely goes the other way, but there are other events that, like Breakfast in the Valley, that we all work together to kind of do that stuff.
Yeah, because what are you going to do with 3,000 cars, right?
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the applicant? I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the site plan for Action City expansion.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion with staff recommendations.
Yes, thank you.
And a second?
I'll second.
And a second. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congratulations. Let's see. That's the landmarks designation, agenda item number 7. Mr. Ivory.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have 3 proposed landmark designations that the Landmark Commission is considering. They all have a railroad-based theme, and that is not necessarily planned. That's kind of by accident. The first one relates to the Milwaukee-Omaha Railroad Switching Tower that's over in Carson Park. This is owned by the Chippewa Valley Railroad Association, and it's over on leased property over at Carson Park. This particular tower actually is being requested for designation by the Railroad Association. They're hoping that maybe will assist in some marketing and promotion efforts that they're looking at, possibly some grant opportunities that they might be looking at in the future to keep the tower in condition, essentially. The tower itself was constructed back in 1896 by both the Omaha and Milwaukee railroads. It was located to the southeast of Uniroyal, and the red dot here shows about where it was located, with Uniroyal located over in this area here, and this Galloway Street located over in this area right here. It The purpose of the tower was, there was equipment within the tower that a train dispatcher used, and it was basically used to prevent two trains that from crossing the tracks in those areas at the same time. There was a series of interlocking levers within that machine, essentially, that controlled switches and signals down on the tracks themselves that were prevented the trains from actually crossing at the same time. It was actually relocated from its original location about 100 feet further to the west back in 1945, and then it stood at that location until 1992. They continued in continued in operation to control the switches until the train actually, all the levers, the actual operation was switched to a remote operation in Chicago, which essentially made the tower obsolete. So basically it was discontinued in 1992. It was donated to the Chippewa Valley Railroad Association at that time, and then moved to Carson Park right about that time too. So that's the first. Did you want me to just go through all three of them together, or?
You can do all three, yeah.
Okay. And this is a picture of the tower back at its location over along Galloway Street. This was taken in 1989, so just shortly before it was discontinued for use. Second one is the Soo Line, or S Bridge. Aerial view of the S Bridge, and then another photograph of the S Bridge here. This was constructed in 1910 for the Soo Line Railroad. It spans, has 5 spans. The length of it is about 442 feet. The unique S-shaped design was needed for the Soo tracks that parallel both the south and the north sides of the Eau Claire River. It was built for a capacity to hold up to 2 large locomotives plus their trains. The supporting timbers, which I'm sure most of you have been on the bridge, the supporting timbers for the actual deck of the bridge are visible as you're walking along the bridge here, and they're quite massive. They're like 7 inches by 17 inches in size, so quite large. The bridge itself was abandoned in 1991. At that time, it was determined to be eligible for the National Register, and that was about the time that the city was working on converting it over to a pedestrian bridge. It was actually converted to the pedestrian bridge in 2002, and then actually the Landmarks Commission placed a plaque on the near the bridge in 2003, which Jenny was involved with. Here's a photograph of the bridge that was taken around 1979 when it was still in use. And then this was a picture of the plaque that was done in 2003, which Jenny actually was the MC back when you were the chairperson for the Landmarks Commission. The reason for the landmarking, primarily from the Landmark Commission point of view, is just to give the bridge further recognition in terms of the importance of the bridge within the Eau Claire area. And then the last designation is another bridge, and that's the High Bridge. A couple of photos of the bridge here. Currently, as it is decked, an aerial view of the bridge, and this is more of a historic photograph of the bridge here. This bridge was constructed, and then we have a few other photos that were taken. This bridge was constructed in 1889. It's the oldest bridge within the city of Eau Claire. It has a span of about 890 feet, and it's about 82 feet above the water level. It has 4 spans and 3 massive stone piers, as shown here, that are within the water itself. In This bridge is unique that it's the only known bridge with this unique lattice truss design for the bridge deck itself. In 1992, the Chicago Northwestern Railroad discontinued use of the bridge, and the ownership or title of the bridge was transferred to the city in 2007. At that time, it was determined to be eligible for the National Register. Again, that was at the time when we started working on plans for the decking of the bridge. It was open for pedestrian use in 2015. One of the regional railroad historians named John Marvig, who has done a lot of research on railroad bridges within the area, states that this bridge is likely the most significant railroad bridge in Wisconsin based on its age and also the builders of the bridge. It's the only, what they refer to as a quadruple lattice truss bridge. It's the only one known in the world to have that particular design, and it's one of the last surviving products of the Leighton Bridge Works, which designed the building and built the bridge at that time. Similar to the Sioux Line Bridge, the Landmarks Commission again is looking at designating this primarily to give it further recognition within the community because of its importance not only here in terms of Eau Claire, but it looks like on a statewide basis. A couple other photos of the bridge down at the water level. And then this shows the lattice work below the bridge deck. And then again, just kind of showing the lattice work of the bridge and then the piers themselves. And then this was a historic photo of the bridge that shows up in a lot of different magazines with one of the older steam locomotives on top of the bridge. Yep. With that, if you have any questions, the reason we bring these to the Plan Commission is the landmark ordinance indicates as the commission looks at any designation, we're supposed to refer these to the Plan Commission for any comments, and then those comments would be forwarded to the Landmark Commission when they actually have their public hearing.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Arbery? Yep. We all in agreement? Sounds like it's a go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Discussion and direction, any code compliance items? Any future agenda items? So I just have one question. Getting back to that Trillium Estates, been some discussion that there's been another 90 acres on the other side of Double I that have been purchased by the developer as well for another development.
On the south side?
Correct. So when does it get to the point where Eau Claire looks at expanding or annexing? I mean, we're talking about a lot of homes, but
again, under state law, it's property owners that petition to annex. And I don't see expansion occurring in that area for decades into the future.
Okay.
Is my opinion. So Wisconsin isn't a strong city-supported government. It's more of a town and county-supported government. So.
Okay. Yeah, just curious more than anything, what sets that next step?
It's the property owner saying they would desire to petition. Okay. Normally that is set then by, they want a more urban development, which then needs the sewer and water.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. Any other future agenda items? I'm sorry, Commissioner Larson.
I just have a question. When will Menominee Street be back on again?
We'll talk with applicant. He indicated this morning he won't be here in 2 weeks, which would be your next meeting, so we may then schedule it for 4 weeks out. But we'll talk to applicant to make sure it works for his schedule. And we will renotice the whole thing and all that, so. Okay.
Any other questions? Everyone, I'm sorry, Commissioner Eber.
I have a comment. I'd really like to hear the presentation that he did for the Landmarks Commission. I think that would probably really help us, that Kathy, that you referenced in your thing, see what he has to say.
And we'll inform him to
Okay.
make a full presentation.
Okay.
Any other items? Any, everyone a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes, corrections, additions? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire City Plan Commission. This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.